The movie begins with a family of 5. Pastor Dan Bramford, his wife Wendy, their son Christopher, and their daughters Rebecca and Mary are moving from Maryland to the small town of Stull, Kansas, where Dan will take on a new position as pastor. During the trip, the family gets lost and stops at a farm so Dan can ask for directions. Dan and Christopher approach the house while Wendy and the girls wait in the car, unaware that someone is watching them from a distance. Dan finds the house empty until he is surprised by a strange farmer named Mason, the owner of the property. After learning that Dan is the new pastor, Mason offers to guide the family to their new home. While at the farm, Rebecca and Mary notice a young man killing sheep and collecting their blood, which disturbs them. Mason then takes the Bramfords to the new house, where they discover that the moving company was dismissed by the town's current pastor, Pastor Kingsman. Kingsman and several townsfolk are bringing the boxes inside themselves. The family is impressed by the size of the house, and the children eagerly explore to choose their rooms. Rebecca picks hers, but when she looks out the window, she sees a man staring at her. After Mary briefly distracts her, Rebecca looks again and realizes the man has disappeared. Later, while Dan and Wendy unpack, they find a cake on the kitchen counter. Kingsman enters and explains that it was made by his neighbor, Mrs. Gordon, as a welcome gift. He then reminds Dan to come to the church the next day to officially take on his pastoral duties, and mentions that he will soon retire. That night, while Dan prepares for his sermon in the living room, Wendy joins him. They talk for a while before sharing a kiss, unaware that someone is watching them from outside. Later, the couple gathers the children, and Dan thanks them for their support in moving to the new house. As the family begins to pray, a man and woman are seen watching them from the yard. That night, during a storm, Rebecca wakes up to close the window. To her horror, she sees the townsfolk gathered on the lawn outside, and a woman suddenly appears in her room, transforming into a ghost with a wide mouth. Rebecca screams, only to wake up and realize it was a nightmare. The next morning, the family goes to the new church where Dan will serve as pastor. The congregation sings hymns before Pastor Kingsman steps up to the pulpit. During his speech, Rebecca notices the young man she saw earlier on Mason's farm, silently leaving the church. After finishing his sermon and announcing his retirement, Kingsman introduces Dan to the congregation as their new pastor. After the service, the Bramfords are warmly welcomed by the townsfolk, and Rebecca meets the young man from before, introducing himself as Noah. They have a brief conversation before Noah tells her he will see her again and promises to show her the town. Back at home, Mary, feeling hungry, decides to cut a slice of Mrs. Gordon's cake. However, Rebecca warns her not to do that, explaining that Wendy reserved the cake for the family's first dinner in their new house. Ignoring her sister's advice, Mary eats a slice of the cake and enjoys it until she suddenly starts choking and coughing up blood. To her horror, Mary pulls a large animal tooth from her mouth, revealing that it had been baked inside the cake. Moments later, someone knocks on the door. It's Noah, who came to pick up Rebecca. Rebecca explains what happened to Mary, and when Noah offers to dispose of the cake, he secretly slips the tooth into his pocket instead of throwing it away. After Mary insists that she is feeling better, Noah and Rebecca go out for a walk around town. As Noah shows Rebecca different places, the townsfolk begin to look at him strangely, making him uncomfortable. Their outing is interrupted when Mason appears, telling Noah that Pastor Kingsman wants to see him. When Noah returns home, where he lives with Kingsman, the pastor reminds him of his duty, telling him that he must do what needs to be done because it is God's will. Realizing that Noah has developed feelings for Rebecca, Kingsman warns him not to get too close to the Bramfords and emphasizes the importance of obedience. Noah then shows him the animal tooth, explaining that Mary found it before he distanced himself. After Noah leaves, Kingsman examines the tooth and removes his shirt. Strange marks cover his body. He takes a box full of similar objects and carefully puts the new tooth inside. Later that night, when Rebecca returns home, she discovers that Mary is not feeling well and rushes to her room. The sisters talk, and Rebecca mentions her time with Noah and how Mason interrupted them. She also mentions where Noah lives. That night, Rebecca has another nightmare. She finds herself sitting in a field as a group of sheep approaches. When she touches one, she notices black goo on her hands and soon realizes that the substance covers her entire body. Suddenly, she is surrounded by the sheep, all covered in the same black goo. And just before they can attack her, Rebecca wakes up terrified. The next day, Wendy and her family prepare for the summer festival that will take place in a few days. Dan, Christopher, Rebecca, and Mary, who seems to be feeling better, go into town to look around. The streets are bustling with festival preparations, and Rebecca notices Mason talking to Kingsman. Mary tries to talk to a boy, but he refuses to respond, and then she notices a strange mark on his arm. Meanwhile, Rebecca meets up with Noah, and they decide to spend time together. They go to a meeting at the observation tower and fight fire in the forest surrounding the city. There, they talk, and Rebecca notices a scar on Noah's hand, which he tries to hide. When she asks if Kingsman is his father, Noah tells Rebecca that Kingsman took him in after his parents died. They start to kiss, but their moment is interrupted when Rebecca sees a man watching them from the trees below. When Noah returns home, Kingsman confronts him angrily about spending time with Rebecca. He tells Noah that he cannot stop what is coming, calling it God's will. Noah insists he wants to save the family, but Kingsman coldly tells him to do his part before walking away. The next day, Dan and his family go to the festival where Rebecca and Mary meet Noah. While the sisters enjoy the festivities, Noah notices Kingsman talking to a woman who discreetly gestures to him, suggesting they grab lemonade at a nearby stand. Rebecca sees a scar on the woman serving the drinks and recognizes her as the creature from her dream. The woman drugs the cup of lemonade served to Mary, and unaware of this, Mary drinks the lemonade and quickly becomes gravely ill. Rebecca offers to take Mary to their parents, but Mary insists she can find them alone, so Rebecca can stay with Noah. Unable to find them, Mary tries to return home alone, but collapses in Mason's arms, who takes her away. Mary wakes up tied to a post in the middle of a pit filled with water, surrounded by the townsfolk. Using a ceremonial finger with claws attached to the animal tooth, Pastor Kingsman cuts his wrist and lets his blood drip into the water. Terrified, Mary pleads for them to let her go, but her screams are ignored as Kingsman tells her that she has been chosen according to God's will. It is revealed that the tooth Mary found in the cake was part of a kind of ritual lottery. Whoever bites the tooth first is marked as the chosen one. After Kingsman recites a series of ritualistic words, the water begins to bubble, and the ground opens up as the door to hell is revealed. Dark marks emerge from the pit and wrap around Mary, consuming her entirely. Later, Kingsman brings Mary back to the festival, looking calm, as if nothing had happened, and the townspeople seem to already know what occurred. Kingsman takes Mary to her parents, explaining that she fell ill and, worried, decided to bring her to them. Wendy asks Christopher to find Rebecca. Meanwhile, Noah, who is deeply disturbed by what happened to Mary, tries to confess everything to Rebecca but is interrupted by Christopher, who informs her that Mary has fallen ill again. The family leaves the festivities and rushes home with Mary. At home, Wendy helps Mary up the stairs, as she is weak and dazed, and they enter the room while Dan receives a call from Kingsman asking him to come to the church. Wendy insists that he should not go, worried about Mary's condition, but Dan insists that Kingsman said it was important and goes. When Dan arrives at the church, Kingsman tells him he needed to get him out of the house, leaving Dan confused. Kingsman secretly soaks a cloth in ether, apologizes for what must happen to the Harmon family, and then knocks Dan out with the cloth. Meanwhile, dark marks begin to dominate Mary, and when a rat scurries by, she grabs it and devours it. And at the same time, the townsfolk paint X's on the front doors of their houses using sheep's blood. At the Harmon house, Rebecca goes to check on Mary and finds her trembling on the floor, gradually being possessed. Rebecca calls for Wendy, and together they run to the bathroom, where Mary vomits a black substance, terrifying her family. Christopher is instructed to call emergency services, but discovers that the phone is not working. After helping Mary back to her room, Wendy tells the other two children to look for their father, unaware that Mary is now fully possessed. As they walk toward the church, Rebecca and Christopher notice the X-shaped marks on the doors of each of the townsfolk, which leaves them perplexed. When they arrive at the church, they find the doors locked until Noah appears and manages to open them. Inside, they discover Dan lying unconscious on the church floor. They help Dan get up and begin driving home. Meanwhile, Wendy goes to check on Mary and finds her sitting in the corner, with black marks spreading wherever she touches. Mary's possession attacks Wendy, making her fall down the stairs, and then the evil grabs the woman. Meanwhile, on the journey, they notice that all the houses have a mark on the door, an X made of blood. Scared, Rebecca repeatedly questions Noah about the mark, but he refuses to answer. When they arrive home, Dan and Rebecca try to enter to fetch Wendy and Mary. However, Noah grabs Rebecca, telling her to stay outside and insisting that there is nothing she can do to help them. Dan goes inside and, to his horror, finds Wendy dead and disintegrating on the couch. He is shocked and sees Mary crawling toward him from the stairs. Frightened, he runs outside, screaming for Rebecca and Noah to start the car and get away. They do so, but Dan stays behind in an attempt to save Mary, who follows him to the front yard, only for him to meet the same fate as Wendy. Rebecca makes Noah stop the car and demands an explanation. Noah finally tells her that the town harbors a door to evil, and that the only way to close it is by sacrificing the chosen family, which is currently the Bramfords. He reveals that his own family faced the same fate, and that Pastor Kingsman took him in after they were all killed. Meanwhile, Christopher sees Mary approaching from behind the car. Panicking, he runs away and knocks on the doors of nearby homes, begging for help. Noah forces Rebecca back into the car and speeds away, leaving Christopher behind. Christopher continues banging on different doors, pleading for someone to help him, but nobody answers. He finally finds a house and is able to enter, just as Mary grabs his leg, infecting him. Desperate, he asks the family inside why they didn't help him, but they remain silent. Despite his pleas, the terrified father drags him back outside. But before Mary can reach him, Noah suddenly appears and runs her over. At that exact moment, Pastor Kingsman feels the impact and spits blood. Rebecca manages to rescue Christopher, but noticing that his infection is worsening, Noah parks the car in the middle of the street and decides to leave, begging Rebecca to drive away if they see Mary. Moments later, dark tendrils begin to spread through the street, and the car loses power just as Mary catches up to them. Noah returns and holds on to Rebecca, while Mary kills Christopher. Horrified, Rebecca and Noah flee together. Noah tells her that he knows a place where they can hide, but instead, he takes her to a gathering of the townsfolk assembled under the command of Pastor Kingsman. Pastor Kingsman informs Rebecca that the door to hell must be closed, and the only way to do so is by using her blood. And suddenly, the possessed Mary appears at the gathering. While Rebecca is distracted, Noah cuts her wrist and uses her blood to destroy the demon, killing Mary in the process and sealing the door. As Rebecca faints, the townsfolk gather around her as a radiant light begins to shine from the center of the ritual circle. Sometime later, another family moves into the town. They stop at Mason's farm to ask for directions, and the young son is drawn to Rebecca, who has taken Noah's place by sacrificing a sheep before walking away.